The second body, the subtle body. Now we will use the same process of dissolution by inquiry in trying to trace the I in the subtle body. Let us investigate and see if this thief called I can be found anywhere in the subtle body. First, let us find out what the subtle body is. The subtle body is comprised of a committee of 17 members. They are the 5 senses of action: hands, feet, mouth, genitals, and anus. The 5 senses of knowledge: eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and skin. And the 5 pranas, or vital breaths: the Vyana Vayu, which supplies liquid food materials throughout the body; the Samana Vayu, which is found in the navel; in the Udana Vayu, which is found in the throat; in the Apana Vayu, which is found in the bowels; and the Prana Vayu, which is what we breathe in and out. And then there is the mind, manas, and the intellect, buddhi. Whatever orders that this committee of the subtle body puts forth are carried out by the gross body. The subtle body's field of authority is very vast, so in conducting a thorough investigation, it may be possible to find the elusive I here, because this pseudo-entity has a strong passion for asserting authority. When we begin our investigation of the subtle body, we found that the I puts a stamp of mine here also. Whatever is found here is labeled as my senses, my prana, or my mind, or my intellect. However, upon closer examination, no such sound as I am the intellect is ever heard. That I parades around as the owner here in the subtle body also, but is nowhere to be found. Thus, according to the same discriminative reasoning and inquiry used previously, there can be nothing which I can call mine where I am not present. The subtle body, nor any of its collective members, the senses, pranas, mind, or intellect, can be me. There is an objection that can be raised to this logic of where I am not, there can be nothing which I can call my own. For example, King George V is not present in Sholapur. Does it then follow that Sholapur is not under his ownership? The answer to this objection is thus: at least there is an individual who is called George V, and even if he is living elsewhere, he can have ownership in Sholapur even though he is presently not there. However, this I is a non-entity, and like Mr. Gomaji Ganesh from the early example, the proliferation of its arrogance and ignorance has remained unexamined, and this I is claiming authority here in the subtle body as well. When the I cannot be traced, how can there be anything there that can be claimed as mine to be sustained by the subtle body? The subtle body is like a subtle silk bundle. Even though it is more difficult to untie the subtle silk knot through inquiry than it is with the gross body, it is still necessary for the aspirant to put forth the effort to untie it. Once the bundle is untied and left open for thorough examination, the subtle body is automatically renounced. It is important to recognize that the subtle body is itself the seed of birth and death, which is of the nature of desire. If that seed is roasted just once in the fire of knowledge, it may appear unchanged, but even if it were ever to be sown, there is no hope of its sprouting. Another doubt may arise here that if both the gross and subtle bodies are renounced, and the attitude of pride such as I and mine also disappears, is it not possible that the actions of the body may either come to a halt or might not be executed efficiently? The doubt may be removed thus. Suppose someone keeps a thing in a locker because he is under the impression that it is made of gold. However, at some point he finds out that instead of gold, it is really made of brass. With that recognition, he can choose to either leave it in the locker or remove it and keep it outside. His attachment to it will either vanish or become greatly diminished. And this is a fact. In the same way, if the pride of possession of the body as mine is ignored, nothing of value will be lost. Saint Tukaram said, "Let the body live or die. I have complete faith in my self-nature." If an aspirant reaches this level of conviction, the attitude arises, when one experiences the bliss of Brahman, who cares for the body? And when this attitude arises, it is truly praiseworthy. A dog once bit off a piece of flesh from Saint Kabir's calf muscle. Saint Kabir simply said, "Either the dog knows or the flesh knows. Anything is possible." What could have been the feeling of the people around upon hearing this from Saint Kabir, who was a great devotee? The aspirant can easily see the degree of renunciation that Saint Kabir had reached. He fully understood that it was the flesh that was affected and not his true nature. Although this understanding that the self remains unaffected was experienced by Saint Kabir and also by Saint Tukaram when he lost his whole household, the aspirant might not get the same sense of unshaken ecstasy within oneself, at least in the beginning, when one initially undertakes the search for the I. If by God's grace such bliss does overwhelm you, you might say, "What are all these worldly possessions worth after all?" And you will never feel the need to ask such pointless questions as, "Will my house be run properly?" At that point, you will have developed such an indifferent attitude that you will say, "Let whatever is to happen, happen, and let whatever has to go, go." However, if the aspirant understands intellectually, which is easier than experiencing the self, he raises the question, after the knowledge of the self is attained and the possessive pride of the body and the mind is left behind, can one's worldly duties still be performed? To console him, the Sadguru answers, "Dear one, of course, even after realizing the utter uselessness of the body and mind, one can establish a household and have children without bringing in the pride of the body and the mind. In fact, these things can be looked after very well. All of the relevant duties one did earlier can still be diligently performed." How is this possible, you may ask? Understand by this example. Look at the behavior of the nurse of a motherless infant. She nurses the child, carries it around, consoles it if he cries, and nurses it back to health if he gets sick, just as she would if she were the child's actual mother. If she likes the child, she even kisses it lovingly. While doing all of this work, she does not even have the feeling that the child is her own. In spite of all that she does for the child, if the father of the child dismisses her, she at once picks up her things and gets out of the house. At the time of quitting her position, she is neither happy if the child was put on weight, or unduly sad if the child were to die. The reason for this attitude is that she does not have the sense of mind regarding the child. However, it cannot be said that she has not performed her duty properly due to the absence of this sense of mind. Let us look at another example. Take the case of a trustee who manages a minor's estate worth millions of rupees. His lack of the sense of mind does not hinder him in his duty, and he has been managing the estate of the minor very efficiently. If the duty is not discharged properly, the trustee is liable and will surely suffer the consequences. The trustee does not have the feeling that the estate is mine, and accordingly is not affected if the estate increases in value, or even if it is decided in a legal suit that the estate does not really even belong to the minor. His duty is to look after the estate carefully as long as it is under his management. In short, in order for one's duties to be performed properly, it is not necessary that one must have the sense of I or mind while performing them. In exactly the same way, the gross and subtle bodies form a bundle that is rooted in the 5 elements and is given as a keepsake which is entrusted to the human being. As a trustee, you must look after the bundle in the best possible way. If you neglect this responsibility, you will surely suffer consequences in the form of loss of health of both body and mind. If the trustee manages the minor's estate efficiently, and the nurse looks after the child very well, they are awarded their salaries in return. Likewise, if you look after your body and mind well, and keep them in a healthy condition, you also get a return in the form of joy. A healthy body is definitely useful in the search for the ultimate truth. All of this carrying out of one's responsibilities has to be achieved without the sense of mind. With this attitude, even if the body becomes fat or thin, or lives or dies, there is no elation or lamentation. If a trustee of the minor's estate is led astray by a sense of mind and claims ownership and embezzles from that estate, he will be jailed. In the case of spiritual practice, the identification with the body means forgetting the self or killing the self. The hope of liberation recedes for the one who is bound by the idea of being a body, even though in truth he is only nothing but the self. From the above discussion, it can be understood that the usual obligations and actions of the body and mind should be fulfilled in a proper manner, and that it is not necessary to establish a sense of ownership or a concept of mine in relation to them. The obligations of the trustee and the nurse, while carrying out their responsibilities, do not require them to have any sense of possession, and their duties are performed quite normally. In the same manner, the duties of a human being can be performed without entertaining the sense of possession or any concept of mind in relation to the physical or subtle bodies.